In our update today, we're going to begin with background on a crash that happened on the Hutchinson River Parkway last evening, address some of those issues. We do have members of the press who are here that want to ask some follow-up questions, so we're going to encourage that to happen and complete that bit of information. And then we'll take a brief break, and then we'll come back to touch on some other important issues that we want to share with you in our normal weekly update. There are certain times when the incidents that happen have a much broader interest than just updating you on what's happening locally and some of the issues that come before the county government, which not is always compelling. But there was a tragic accident last night on the Hutchinson River Parkway. It was another incidence of wrong-way driving situation in which individuals were injured. I'm going to let Chief James Luciano, who is the head of the department, working underneath the commissioner of our Westchester County Department of Public Safety. They are responsible for policing the parkways of Westchester County, although the Hutchinson River Parkway is not operated by Westchester County government, so that responsibility of the policing puts Jim and his men and women directly in contact with this incident. So Chief Luciano, please tell us what happened last evening.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Good afternoon. The Westchester County Police are currently investigating a serious motor vehicle crash that occurred on the Hudson River Parkway a little after midnight this morning, and it did involve a wrong-way driver. The accident occurred on the northbound Hudson River Parkway in the confines of the village of Rybrook, just north of the Lincoln Avenue area. The driver of the wrong-way vehicle suffered serious injuries in the crash and remains hospitalized at the Westchester County Medical Center in Valhalla. She has been identified as 75-year-old Joan Feinstein, who lives in Rybrook. The vehicle that she struck, there were 5 occupants of the other vehicle. They were taken to local hospitals, and a preliminary investigation determined that Feinstein was driving a 2024 Mercedes sedan southbound in the northbound lanes of travel when she collided with the other vehicle, which was a 2018 Dodge Durango that was driven by Mordecai Sandman, 49 years old, of New Haven, Connecticut. Within Sandman's vehicle were his wife and 3 children who were also seated in the car. All but one were injured, but had not sustained life-threatening injuries at this time. The collision, as I stated, occurred in the northbound lanes of travel near Lincoln Avenue, and the northbound Hudson River Parkway was closed for multiple hours while an accident investigation took place overnight. Traffic was diverted off the northbound Parkway onto Lincoln Avenue until about 7 a.m. this morning, at which time all lanes of travel were opened. The full circumstances of the incident remain under investigation by our County Police Accident Investigation Team, as well as our General Investigation Unit.
Thank you, Chief. And we'll stand by for any questions that may be better directed to the chief from his responsibilities. Let me just state for the record that the Hutchinson River Parkway is one of a number of parkways in Westchester County that are owned by the New York State Department of Transportation. Westchester County owns the Bronx River Parkway, Playland Parkway in the city of Rye, the Central Westchester Parkway, which connects 287 to northbound New York 22 and White Plains North Castle, and a couple of other roads along with the normal county roads. So our responsibilities when we look at this road for what does this incident represent in terms of wrong-way driving is one where we will be interacting with the New York State Department of Transportation. We had about 2.5, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, just about the time COVID began, we impaneled a committee to look at the Bronx River Parkway, which we do have operating responsibility for. And we asked that group to look at all of the entrances and exits of the Bronx River Parkway and suggest any signage or changes that would be necessary to try to reduce the incident of wrong-way driving. And you may have noted if you travel the Bronx River Parkway, there's many more signs up that say freeway entrance here and things of that nature. We made a few other changes. Our experience on the Bronx River Parkway has been very good since that date. Nothing eliminates wrong-way driving because sometimes there are incidents that involve the driver and the circumstances of weather at the time. But we believe that the safety of all of the other parkways in Westchester County can be improved. Working with the New York State Department of Transportation, we are going to encourage them to do a similar study and to make similar recommendations for additional signage. We don't know the specifics of this. At some point in time, there'll be dialogue with the driver. We're happy to know that she has survived and is likely to survive going forward. But we want to do everything we can to reduce these tragedies in the days to come, and we hope that our work with the New York State Department of Transportation will help make this the kind of story that doesn't repeat in the future. So let me open it up to my friends in the press for any questions they may have. You're welcome to address either Chief Luciano or myself.
Did the driver say anything about the conditions at the time of the accident, the road conditions, whether she felt perhaps that was an issue?
So very limited conversation with both drivers, the one that was driving southbound, northbound lanes and driving northbound in the proper direction. Due to their serious injuries at the time and the lack of coherence, we weren't able to obtain statements at the scene regarding, the circumstances that led them to that horrible crash.
A question for the chief. What were the ages of the children?
You bear with me for a moment. The driver of the northbound, the children, 25-year-old, 12 years old, and 17 years old.
Any sign of intoxication?
Preliminary investigation has revealed that there was no alcohol involvement at this time. Again, it's preliminary. We're still waiting for, court-ordered blood results and toxicology to come back before we complete our investigation and to add to the total report.
Condition of the driver, Ms. Feinstein?
She's in critical condition, but likely to survive at this time.
Do you know what was the extent of her injuries?
She had serious lower extremity injuries and serious internal injuries at the time.
I believe this is not the first time that we report a crash pretty similar in the same location. You think it is necessary, you already spoke about it, but it's necessary more signing, particularly in this location?
If you want to comment, then I'll comment.
Well, at this time, there appears to be adequate signage in the areas on all exits and entrance to the Parkway with do not enter, wrong way, turn around, go back, etc. One serious accident we had in the not too distant future involved an impaired driver, which obviously affected the ability to operate a motor vehicle, which was a direct cause of the accident.
Do you find it unusual, Chief, before County Executive, before you step in? Do you find it unusual, Chief, that, if I heard you correctly, Ms. Feinstein is from Rybrook?
Correct.
That in this particular instance, with a woman who's got an address in a known area, that
Correct.
surprisingly you would think she'd know the entrances and exits of the roads. Any early indication from what you've been able to gather, I know you haven't had a chance to talk to her, but how someone who lives in that town could make such a almost fatal mistake?
Again, we don't surmise anything without proper facts. I don't want to misspeak or take any opinions. It's a professional investigation and it's in depth. We cross all those bridges, ask all those questions when we're able to, and to obtain the proper information.
When you saw her state her address?
I guess any layperson would say, you should be familiar. But again, we don't know all the entire circumstances surrounding the accident, so we're still gathering facts.
Any indication of
And before you go further with that, let me just add that I think we want to know the weather conditions as they are accurately reported at the time. I was out last night in another part of that general area of the county, light rain and light fog conditions, not heavy fog, but light fog. So we don't know if those are contributory factors, and that would be part of your investigation as well. Continue.
any indication about the speed at which Ms. Feinstein?
Not at this time. That's all part of our investigation of obtaining data from the vehicles, as well as statements that we would obtain from the drivers or occupants, which we haven't been able to do at this time because we're more concerned about their medical state and obtaining the proper care.
What about possible charges or citations for Ms. Feinstein at this point?
Again, it's all part of the investigation, and once we come to a conclusion, and in consultation with the district attorney's office if necessary, if charges are warranted, they will be filed.
Chief, can you spell the name of the 49-year-old driver that was traveling with his family, you said?
Yes. His last name, Sandman, Sandman. His first name's Mordecai, Mordechai.
Have you looked at her driving history? Does she have any other prior incidents?
I have not. I have not had an opportunity myself to review that. That will be all part of the case file as we move forward.
So he was the driver, Mr. Sandman, in the passenger seat was his wife?
Correct.
And do you have her name and age?
We do.
You'd be so kind.
She's 46 years old, and her first name was Miriam.
And he was, how old?
He's 49 years of age.
And the other three, you believe, were their children.
Yes.
Mr. County Executive, we recently did a story across the border in Connecticut with Governor Lamont, and they've taken a proactive step at many of their exit and entrance ramps to install some sort of, I don't know if it's new technology, but an alert that if the driver's going the wrong way, lights begin to flash in one direction and a camera starts to roll so that they can record any turnaround or whatever. Would that be part of what you might examine with working with the New York State DOT in terms of whether that, if it works in Connecticut, they could work in New York?
Yeah, no, I think that would be part of our recommendation. One of the concerns that we have is the age of these parkways. Most of them were built anywhere from the 1920s through the 1940s, and they were never really meant to have this type of volume of traffic, nor this type of speed of traffic. And the standards that we have for interstate highways, which started in the 1950s, the kind of deceleration, acceleration lanes, the way the exits interact with the local roads are very different at the interstate highway level than they are in these parkways. And of course, this area of the country between New Jersey, Connecticut, and New York have parkways that are limited access highways, but they aren't as engineered the way that an interstate highway is. And so there's clearly more things that we could do to improve it. When we looked at the Bronx River Parkway situation, I mentioned signage, but there are also places on the Bronx River, and I would argue that that's true of parts of the Sawmill, parts of the Hutch, where getting on and getting off are almost side by side in an awkward way. And to clarify that with signage and or other things, where you create a barrier between them, we'll turn to the traffic professionals to tell us how to fix it. But we know that a person, perhaps who's not familiar with the area, is more susceptible to having that happen. But if weather conditions are such that visibility is reduced, even a person who's familiar with the area might have a problem being able to see that. And I can tell you, as I drive around the area frequently, if it's at night, and last night was a night where there was rain and creates sort of sheen on the walk, you have to sort of slow down and look exactly where you are, because you could easily misjudge your circumstances. You may not go in a wrong way, but you might find yourself not on the roadway because you've miscalculated where it is. So all of that will go into our request. New York State DOT, very professional organization. They've been very good about responding to these things in the past, and I think the fact that we've now had a couple of incidents warrants that attention. But I would point out, and I know you've all covered this story, in this area of the county, we've been very concerned about tractor trailer trucks hitting overpass bridges, particularly the King Street Bridge, which is just one exit north of where this accident happened. And we approached the state DOT, and they did a number of improvements, one of which was to put up electric signage, which you'll see when you drive on the Hutch now in a number of different places, that's more visible to the driver to get off the road. So we think the state will make the effort and make the additional work necessary.
Plus, you have in your arsenal, if you do not, the 4 years of work that you've done on the Bronx River Parkway as something that
Right.
you can wave under their nose and say, here's what we did 4 years ago, here are the results now. Obviously, something is working.
Right. We're going to use gentle persuasion to make those points. When you are the smaller government, you try to convince the bigger government to do the things you think they should.
Do you have any numbers in terms of the percentage decrease of accidents as a result of the work you've done on the Bronx River?
No, learning about this accident last night, we now have our people working on some of those things and actually looking at this particular intersection to determine if we can make a recommendation in these locations. I personally know all of the intersections of this section of the Hutch. North Ridge Street, just south of that, Lincoln Avenue, just south of that, Purchase Street. I've driven them many times. And there are some things that would improve the situation. And I do think what you've suggested in Connecticut is that next iteration of using technology in a way that would help us be that much more secure. I would point out it's not the case in this particular situation, but what we have found is that when we see wrong way driving, a certain percentage of it is intoxicated drivers. And so to the extent that we make road improvements, we can reduce the driver who may not be able to visibly see the circumstances properly, weather conditions or otherwise, but there's a certain amount of wrong way driving that won't be fixed if we're dealing with the drunk driving. So that becomes part of our DWI effort to really try to emphasize more drive only when you have control of the vehicle properly.
Point of clarification, we can safely go on the air tonight and say that the changes made along the Bronx River Parkway have, without question,
have reduced years. I believe that's what our patrol unit has shown as well. And in fairness, the Bronx River Parkway is even older and with more complicated entrance and exits than the Hutch or the Sawmill because it was created at an earlier time. So it was in greater need of this improvement, which we're happy to have done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for either the chief or myself on this one point? For those who are viewing, we're going to take a brief break, and then we'll be back to continue our report. Thank you for continuing to watch.